Welcome back, Fragrance Fiend here today doing a first impression of Creed's new 2024 release for women, it's Queen of Silk. It comes in 30ml for 299 Australian dollars and 75ml for 469 Australian dollars. So I'm very familiar with the House of Creed, I do own quite a few of their products myself. However, in recent years my interest has just kind of dropped with what they've been releasing lately. It hasn't really struck a chord with me. I smelled Carmina once and didn't bother smelling it again, and they haven't really done any masculine fragrances for years. The new Milseam 1849 or whatever it is, isn't even available in Australia. I believe the last masculine flagship was years ago. I mean, they had the flanker of Viking Cologne, then Aventus Absolute, but I'm guessing there will probably be a more masculine release later this year, hopefully. Creed used to be one of my most favorite brands. They probably had the largest influence on me getting into fragrance more, especially the niche stuff. I can personally appreciate a lot of female fragrances, but Creeds have just been kind of a hit and miss with me. I've never really gravitated toward them that much. So my first disappointment with this sample is that there is no information regarding the scent. It does say Queen of Silk on the back along with the generic aroma molecules as the ingredients, but nothing about the note breakdown, nothing about what is inspired by this fragrance, not even a QR code or anything to like link you to the website to find more about this fragrance. We all know the story now, so I'm not going to read you that, but thankfully for me, I've got the note breakdown in front of me. In the top you have osmanthus, magnolia and saffron with a heart of tuberose, passion fruit, arguwood and patchouli. I'm looking forward to that passion fruit. Lastly with a base of vanilla, incense, myrrh, ambroxan, which is a tiny bit of a surprise because they've always mentioned ambergris, which is obviously sourced from the whale, and I highly doubt Creed have used genuine ambergris due to the price in at least the past 10 to 20 years, if not ever. But I don't have information to thoroughly comment on that. Lastly, you've also got cedarwood and musk, like any good fragrance does have musk. So I've got my sample here, let's get on with this first impression. Very interesting. Getting a ton of that saffron. It's a lot more sweeter than I guess I kind of expected a tiny bit of sweetness due to the notes, but that saffron is coming in quite harshly, but the tuberose is definitely quite heavy in this one. But yeah, definitely getting magnolia and tuberose right in that opening hit. It's smooth, yet also mildly piercing on the nose as well. This is probably the biggest left turn I've smelt from Creed. It doesn't really have that typical Creed DNA to it, or what you at least expect from the brand, especially if you were to buy this as a gift for someone who's a long-time Creed fanatic. I don't know if the brand is trying to diversify, but it's different. Florals don't always sit the best on my skin personally. They do tend to turn a tiny bit. The tuberose in this is quite reminiscent of Dauson by Diptyque, but not comparing the two by any means. It does have that similar sort of tuberose, since there are a few varieties of how it can actually smell. I'm going to spray it on paper to get a bit more of a cleaner representation of what it smells like to the average nose, rather than on skin. It smells 10 times better on paper than it does on my skin. This is not bad, but this I'm not too fond of. Surprisingly, I actually like it better on paper. I'm getting an overdose of the florals on my wrist, yet I'm getting a balance of that saffron and vanilla and passion fruit on the paper. Those are obviously the synthetic elements, as you can't put real saffron in perfumery. I believe they use saffronol or saffronite due to saffron being highly allergenic in perfume. So the natural elements of the perfume are really coming out on my skin, while the synthetics are coming out a lot more on the paper. If it did smell like this on my skin as it does on the paper, I'd probably like it a little more, but it's already turning quite musky and dirty. This actually smells striking similar to a $150 Tocca fragrance. This actually doesn't smell like Creed whatsoever. It's got a very foreign DNA in it. This actually smells like it's been constructed by a copycat trying to replicate a scent from Maison Francis Kurkdjian. And I'm not saying it smells like Baccarat, I'm just saying his style is very familiar. Anytime I seem to critique a fragrance and give it almost a negative review, the dislikes start pouring in. But my whole channel is built around giving honest, non-paid reviews, so feel free to dislike all you want because it does not change my life one bit. So it's beginning to dry down a tiny bit more interesting. The vanilla, the incense is coming out a tiny bit more. Thankfully that tuberose has kind of died off, which I wasn't really a fan of. The fragrance smells like it's going through a tiny bit of a midlife crisis. It starts off very sweet, youthful and lush, and then within the span of about 2 minutes it ages about 40 years and you smell old and mature. It's not until that heart begins to evaporate where it becomes a little more wearable and less clustered, I guess. Still, I actually quite like it on paper, but my skin is not having it. I personally believe that 95% of Creed hate is completely unjustified. I still do consider myself a fan of Creed, I've just kind of tuned out of what they've been doing recently. I own about 6 of their fragrances and I've smelt the entire range countless times. I even quite like Aventus for her Love in White, Princess Royal Oud even, but this just doesn't feel like the brand. It simply smells like a $100 fragrance inside a $300 bottle. Anyway, I really wanted to like this one. There is a lot of pressure, I guess, on Creed at the moment of delivering with their next masculine fragrances. I absolutely love Viking Cologne, Royal Oud. Even the stuff they did in the early 2000s and 90s were brilliant. I just feel when they get tied up creating feminine fragrances, they kind of lose where they're from. Yet brands like Xerjoff, Penhaligon's, Kilian, Mason Francis Kurkdjian, and so many more brands do incredible feminine fragrances, which I love to wear. Anyway, it's rarely that I'm quite let down by a fragrance, especially from such a reputable brand, but that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.